All right, we are live. I am sitting here with internationally certified yoga therapist, certified health and wellness coach, who has had over a decade of working with her clients. And on top of all of that, is a podcast host of the Art and Yoga and Wellness podcast, Kira Whitaker. Finally, we've made it.
Finally, randomly got our schedules to match.
We were supposed to record this a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. And then a conversation got started based on some things that I was sharing on social. And we just said, we need to do a podcast on this like immediately. And we made it work. And I'm so impressed with both of us.
Yeah. In less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
While running businesses and having four small children between the two of us.
Yeah, that's dedication, baby. Y'all are welcome.
You are welcome.
But I wanted it to be timely, and this is, so we're going to be talking about alcohol today and just our thoughts around it. And I want to say up front that this podcast is in no way, shape, or form us pushing our thoughts. This is something that's so new for me. I don't even really know where I fall just yet. This is just like a new kind of journey that I'm embarking on, I think. And, so this isn't us like pushing our thoughts or beliefs or judgments or anything onto anybody. This is just a pure, honest, timely conversation that's timely for you and I, both of us lately.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to be here so we can chat. Really quickly, give us a rundown of who you are, how you got here, and just tell us all the things about you, because you are an impressive lady.
Oh, get out
certification
of here.
on certification on certification. Vanderbilt certified, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for having me on. I'm so excited that we organically let the perfect timing happen, because I think our conversation today, one, is needed, but I think that it's going to be way better than if we had talked a month ago. A month ago would have been great, but I think this one is going to be way better. So yeah, I'm Kira, and I'm the owner of Art and Yoga and Wellness, which is a health and wellness company. I see clients one-on-one for therapeutic yoga and then health coaching and behavior change. I opened my business back in 2012. In my past life, I worked in Western medicine. I was a nurse, and I am a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. I did my health coaching training for clinicians at Vanderbilt Medical University in Nashville. And then I'm an internationally certified yoga therapist. So I kind of pull from both of those avenues when I work with people. And I've got 2 kids and a husband, and I live on a farm. I live in Middle Tennessee, right down the road from Allie, and started a podcast last month. I think, as most of us do, just as free value for our community and for people to get to spend more time with us outside of the short clips of social media. And I think that's it. I think that's the rundown. If you can think of anything exciting that I left out.
Pretty I wish it was a little bit more impressive, honestly. I wish you just gosh, Kira, just wish you'd done something with your life, It's kind of
I'm just trying to find my way.
Well, I'll give you a shot. Here we go.
Thanks.
Yeah, you guys have to go follow Kira, and if, per usual, we'll link all the things in the show notes. But I'm always so excited selfishly when you're doing stories in your house, because I'm like looking around trying to see over your shoulder, and when you show that backyard, and just one of the most beautiful farms I've seen. It's such a vibe.
Well, you need to come and see it.
Okay.
You're like 40 minutes away from me.
On my way. Here I come. I'm like taking all your design options.
Come on.
Okay, so I have a story for you.
Yeah.
Monday,
Okay.
which was as we record this 2 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
I wake up, feel fine, day is normal. And it's a podcast day, which I was really excited about.
Okay.
So I had a couple of topics, a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. And I caught up with Voxer with my clients, and then I went upstairs, sat down to record and got some notes together. I was like, yeah, I mean, I've done this a million times, ready to go. And I started speaking, and probably like 2 sentences in, nothing. I mean, like, there was like zero flow. It was like my brain just wasn't working. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I was like, oh gosh, I need to like flesh out some more notes, so I flesh out some more notes, shake it off. I very rarely nowadays, and you're a podcaster, so you get this, but like very rarely stop recording or like re-record or
Right.
delete recordings. But I was like, okay. So anyway, I started again, started talking, stop, do it again. And I did this probably 10 times. And before I knew it, I had been sitting in my closet for 2 hours
Mm.
trying to record a podcast because I was going to talk about one topic, and then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just talk about this other thing. So I started doing that. So before I know it, an hour and a half, 2 hours goes by. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I was so frustrated. I was like, maybe it's just one of those days, whatever. And then I had this realization that I wasn't having a hard time speaking and thinking and being creative about what I wanted to say because it was just a bad day or I was tired, didn't get good sleep. This was happening because I was still hung over from the weekend.
Yeah.
I still had like residual hangover feelings from the weekend. So this weekend, we celebrated my husband's birthday. We had this fun crawfish boil, had my family in town, and his friends were there. Like we did it up. We had a keg, jello shots. I mean,
Yeah.
we did it up.
Yeah.
Great time. Great time. And had a mimosa on Sunday, not much, but like, I mean, I realized like, wait, this is like seriously affecting me cognitively. And it's not that I've never experienced a hangover before or
Right.
understand how hangovers work, but
Yeah.
this is the first time that I've noticed a hangover affecting my work,
Yeah.
wasting my time,
Hmm.
costing me money. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, thank God I don't have a call today, and it's just, and I kind of went down this shame spiral a little bit. I was like, Jesus, this isn't cool. So it just, this started this kind of, this awakening is a strong word, but this realization for me because I was like kind of trying to talk myself off the ledge. I was like, oh, it's fine. You guys had a good time. Who cares? It's not like you have a problem. You don't have to drink, obviously. And then I was like, okay, so I choose to.
Hmm.
I choose to do this to myself.
Yeah.
And so I got on my social media and I was just real about it. I was like, dude, this is because prior to this realization, this has been a conversation that Chris and I have been having off and on here and there, where we're like, maybe we should cut down. We don't, we'll drink on the weekends. One of our issues is we associate fun with drinking, which we'll talk about that. But then like I'll have a glass of wine during the week, a few days a week too, depending on what's going on, and maybe like a beer or something like that. And it's like we've had this conversation of like, should we just cut it back to whatever? So, and we don't. So I got on my stories and was just honest about how I was feeling. And I was like, I don't know why I'm continuing to do this. I think we're going to cut back. Just opening the conversation. Like, what do you guys do? what, like, do you guys have a system for when you drink whatever? Like, if you're sober curious, tell me how you feel. And Kira, when I tell you, I opened the floodgates of, and every single person, every single one, and there was probably, I mean, dozens and dozens of responses and thoughts and feedback. And all of them were, I've either stopped drinking, or I'm sober curious, or I'm trying to find that balance too. Thank you for having this conversation. This is something that's been on my heart. I'm taking this as a sign, which usually it's never, you know this, it's never
Yeah.
like unanimously
Right.
on one side. And it was so fascinating. And then like I brought it to my mastermind and we talked about it there, and so many, all of a sudden it was like these conversations we had never had before. And it was like, it was almost as if we were all yearning for just somebody to say, hey, what are we doing? And I'm not the first person to do this,
Right.
but it's like, what's happening? So anyway, it's now I'm like, gosh, it's no wonder we feel this way. It's this whole culture. So I wanted to bring you on because you have experience with your own situation, and I would love to hear like your perspective and your personal thoughts on it, but also you have like an educational wellness perspective on it as well that I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And isn't it, I think the biggest thing is like for what you said, just kind of with your story on Monday, is we immediately go to this headspace of all or nothing, right? And instead, I would just invite everybody, including you and I, to just be super inviting and just ask questions instead of declarations about I'm never drinking again, or I'm YOLOing it and I've done it this long and I don't know what life would look like without it because I'm scared if I'll be socially awkward without it, or am I going to be fun? Just giving yourself permission to ask questions and experiment with it and play around with it, and only share it with a few safe people you can trust. I don't mean like you and I have platforms, and I'm talking about our audience. You know, if it's something that you're not even really sure how to articulate yet, sit with it, talk about it with your spouse. And I think that's the biggest thing, is starting a conversation about it instead of these huge declarations that you're in one camp or the other. The people in between need to know that there's a seat for them at a table. There's an actual table you can sit at.
I love that you just said that because I tend to be a very all or nothing person,
Yeah,
and it's
same.
like I got okay, it's done. And with this, and this is why it's taken me this long
Mm-hmm.
to do this, because it's like, well, I'm not going to give up drinking. I don't have a problem. So like I have so much fun, and I love to travel, and we love to, celebrate and live life. And, like, I don't want to limit myself. I want to have, do the things that we want to do because it's not hurting us, which that's whole, I mean, well, you could talk about that. But but it's like, wait, okay, it doesn't have to be like that. For some people, that is the answer.
Yeah.
But I just love so much how you said, like, no, there is a middle of the road, and let's talk about what that could look like too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I I I kind of go, well, if I'll just jump in for a second and just kind of talk a little bit about maybe my personal, I don't know if revelation, my personal experience with alcohol the past 6 months. And then I can definitely touch on it from a more clinical standpoint and like professional standpoint. I'm happy to hit it from both perspectives. And you know this, Allie, because I was in your mastermind for 9 months, and the last probably 2 months I was in the mastermind was when I cut alcohol out.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah. So for me, mine was not, it wasn't so much alcohol at first. I felt called, I felt pulled, I felt a yearning to turn down a lot of white noise in my life. I am much like you, I have a lot of plates spinning in the air at all times, and I like it that way. There's nothing that I want to take away, but if I'm not on my game, a plate will fall.
Mm.
And so I was coming into a season where I knew that I had a lot of big things coming up. I knew that I was prepping for the national boards because, I'm always chasing a certification. It's fine, guys. I've talked about it with my therapist. So I was getting ready to sit for the national boards. We were about to launch the podcast. We were putting out multiple levels of programs for clients to have different levels of access to work with me. And then personal life. I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and both are in travel soccer. We have got, animals to take care of. I have an in-person business and online. So just a lot of things and a lot of deadlines coming up, and a lot of ideas and things on paper that I was about to have to bring to life on top of what we were already doing. And it was also coming right out of the holidays. And for me personally, I love the holidays, but I am an introvert extrovert. I love social interaction. I love loving on my people. I love being in community with people, but I require equal, if not more, downtime to recover from social interactions. Than I think a lot of people do that are more extrovert only. And so I was also coming out of the holidays. So I had a lot of social energy that had been taken out of my tank. And then a lot of things that I knew energetically, creatively, cognitively, and then time-wise that were like the next yard line on my football field. And so I felt this pull to turn down the white noise. It's so crazy. I mean, it was just God being gentle with me and gently tapping on my door and having an invitation for me is the best way I can describe this. And I grew up Catholic. I am not a practicing Catholic, but I follow Mark Wahlberg on Instagram. If you don't, follow him for all the reasons, but he's a devout Catholic. I grew up in private Catholic schools. My parents are Catholic. My whole side of the family is Catholic, and Lent was like right about to start. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do Lent. This just feels good. I've got this awesome app on my phone. It'll do guided meditations every morning, and I'm going to do Lent. But I also had no idea what I was going to cut out. And I've mentioned this. I'll go into it in a podcast at some point when I feel ready to dive in, but I don't ever do any sort of fasting where I cut back or eliminate foods or food groups or meals, because I have a history when I was younger of body dysmorphia and eating disorders. So I have to be really careful with that. So I already knew I wasn't going to do that, right? I wasn't going to take out any food. So what I came up with was I was going to cut back on meat a little bit. And then I cut out secular reading because I'm on screens all day anyways. And so reading is my escapism. So I cut out all secular reading. And then I felt really, really called the day of when I was going to start this fast to just cut out alcohol and to say that to myself and declare it for accountability. And all I can say is I just felt ready. I just wanted to see what life felt like without it. And here was my thing. I wasn't like forever or a year. I was just doing it for 40 days. So not 30, just 40. And I had fear because I started drinking in high school, just socially. I mean, I grew up in a small town, bonfires. Not grew up, but I did start drinking in my later teens, and then college life, and then went into adult life. And when I was ready to start this fast, I said to myself, I never wrote the rules of how alcohol fit in my life for myself.
Mm.
I just
Mm-hmm.
accepted it. I write the rules for every single thing in my life. And if it doesn't align with my values, I'm all about values. I do it with
Yeah.
my clients. I speak about it all the time. And so everything in my life is so specific. Who I'm in relationships with, who I will do business with, what organizations I will tithe and give my money and time to, the food that we have in our house and how I nourish my kids, my boundaries around screens for my family. So intentional, and writing my own rules as a grown ass woman who is in a position of leadership and influence, for a lot of people. And the day I was starting this fast, when I had the download of taking out alcohol as an experiment and challenging myself and cutting that out as the white noise, I went, I have never taken authority over this relationship with this in my life and written
Wow.
the rules for it.
Yeah.
Didn't know what it looked like. I'm still figuring it out. But I went in within like 30 seconds from almost feeling not helpless, but not having autonomy over it, to a place of empowerment and going, no, I
Mm-hmm.
can figure this out. And then I did
Wow.
40 days, and my sister got married during that 40 days. We had so many social engagements, 40th birthday parties for one of my closest friends. I mean, a lot of social stuff. And what I realized is there's no difference for me if I'm having a soda water or a water. Like, my social engagement is just as fun. I'm fun without alcohol. I'm still witty. I'm still cared. All the things I like about myself that I thought in social engagements enhanced my personality, it's the same. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same. And the biggest thing for me is alcohol. For me, a lot of times it takes more from me than it gives me,
Yeah.
because I've had so many mornings of the Allie Monday that you had, and
Mm-hmm.
not from a lot. I can have 2 glasses of wine, and I can have 1 glass of wine and it wrecks my sleep now. I feel like I'm going through menopause. Like, I'm sweating, I'm tossing and turning, I'm dehydrated. And so for me, I'm so intentional with every aspect of my life. And alcohol right now is just something that I've realized that it does not have a place consistently in my schedule, in my routine, because my body just doesn't love it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way you put that with like defining your relationship with it is so interesting because, yeah, I mean, with my situation, I grew up, I mean, alcohol was always around, not just in my family. My mom was an alcoholic, my dad's side of the family. I mean, it's just normal. And it was always normalized. And then, of course, like you do the thing. And I think with our culture too, it helps to ingrain this normalization because in all of the music or a lot of the music that we listen to, a lot of the movies that we watch, like, yeah, the quintessential high school experience and college experience is, binge drinking and sneaking. And, it's all surrounded around alcohol. And then
Yeah.
your 20s, it's normal. And I read this article before this and it was so true. It was like in American culture, alcohol is used for celebration and for commiseration. So no matter how you're
Mm,
feeling, basically, whether you're
yeah.
stressed or you're excited or you're sad or you're happy, these
Yep.
are reasons in our culture to drink.
Yeah.
There's always a reason to drink. So yeah, that was a big moment for me. And I love too how you're like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just, the right time. It just finally settled in because that's how it was on Monday for me. It's not that I've never had these thoughts before. It's just that I was always resistant to them until I wasn't. It was just like all
Mhm.
of a sudden it just clicked. And I was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And why am I choosing this? Like,
Mhm.
this isn't, yeah. And this idea of like, it's taking more than it's giving. But I think that's my big fear. Cause for me, I'm quite introverted. And in social settings, I can get some social anxiety. So that's like one thing that I'm fearful of is if I stop drinking, then how am I going to be? Because for you, it may not change at all. For me, I feel like it changes. I go
Yeah.
from being like this outgoing, we'll talk to whoever, to this like anxious, quiet girl who seems very closed off. So that's my thing to work on, I guess.
Yeah. But I also, and totally relating to that, because alcohol was it was ingrained so deeply in my social fabric and in society's social fabric, I hadn't really experimented with if that was true for me. Like that was a story I had told myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't be fun, or maybe I wouldn't be as likable, or I wouldn't be able to have fun. Would I like people as much if I didn't have that buffer? Would my date nights with my husband be as, dreamy? And so I had to give myself permission to go. Worst case scenario is I have one time that's not the greatest time of my life because I didn't drink. And then if I want to have a cocktail the next time I can,
Totally. Right.
And there was a lot of experimentation, and a lot of it was so habitual.
Yeah.
Like, for example, me and my husband, we do a date night on Wednesday night. So we went to this restaurant in town, and we were going to get this one pasta. It sounds so stupid, but maybe it'll land. And as soon as he wanted to get the pasta, I wanted this one Spanish Pinot Grigio to go with it because it would pair so beautifully.
Well, yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's Lent. I'm on day 24, meh, and I was like, I'm not getting it. And then I didn't want the pasta. And I told my husband, there's also for me, there's a culinary experience that I love.
Same.
With wine. I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy the way certain things from, this region pair with this. I enjoy that. I'm not just grabbing alcohol to have alcohol. I mean, there is that experience that I enjoy. But what I've realized is because I'm so selective now, that experience is so much more enhanced because it's not habitual. It's not me just grabbing for something I'm used to. It's me making this conscious decision and really being present because it's almost such a rarity now.
Yes, same. And again, everybody's so different and like what's going to make sense for them. I got a message from somebody and, she said, yeah, but sometimes you just need that glass of wine after a hard day. And I said, do you want it or do you need it? Because there's a big difference between the two, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think like having that discernment for you, but yeah, for us, and I agree with you. And also I think that makes it more exciting, like saving it for the special occasions, the travels, the whatever, but it's all about that choice in the matter. And where me and Chris, as a unit had kind of gone off course a little bit, or not even off course, it's just kind of been the course where I think we're now going, on a better course is it wasn't a choice really. It was just like, oh, it's a Wednesday and it's after work. I'm going to pour me a glass of wine. Oh, I had a shitty day. I'm kind of in a bad mood. I'm going to pour a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Thursday. It's almost Friday. I'm going to pour a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And this adds up. So I think it's just like for us, putting the intentionality back into it and realizing, okay, this is a little bit of a slippery slope. So let's stop sliding down it.
Yeah. Like when the Titanic is pointing towards an iceberg and you're like, we probably need to turn the ship.
Yeah, exactly. And I got an interesting message too from somebody who was talking about, I got so many messages about like spiritual awakenings, which was super interesting. And then somebody was like, as women who are quote coaches or mentors to other people, your mind is like, an athlete's body is to an athlete. That's
Mhm.
what we use for our craft, for our content, for
Yeah.
our mentorship. And that landed too. Was like, damn, that it's so true. And for my career, that's not something I'm wanting to fog up or dumb down or, yeah,
Mhm.
that's the last thing. You know what also is crazy, Kira? I've talked extensively about how last year, 2022, was my best year in business yet. I created the most that I ever have. My energy was through the roof.
Yeah.
I was pregnant. Guess what I wasn't doing?
As soon as you said that, I knew where you were about to tie that in because I was
Yeah,
with you for that 9 months in the
I
mastermind.
know.
So I was with you, like daily in Boxer. And so I firsthand, a lot of your audience won't know exactly what that felt like, but I was with you during that time and 100%. Yes.
It was, and pregnancy, there's a lot going on. So,
Totally. Yeah.
but I mean, it all adds up with each other, right? You have a glass of wine. If it affects your sleep, then it's going to affect your energy in some way, which is going to affect your output, which is going to, yeah, I mean, it's a big ripple effect all
Yeah.
in all. So I think it's just, I mean, the main thing from this conversation is the intentionality and doing what you need to do and redefining that relationship and
Mhm.
setting the rules, taking back control in the
Mhm.
situation. What do you want this to look like?
Yeah.
Who cares what mine looks like? Who cares what Kira's looks like or anybody else's? What do you want yours to look like?
Yeah.
Now, how would you, because I know that one thing that you help your clients with is shifting behaviors
Yeah.
and adopting better habits and undoing habits that they want to undo. So, for somebody who has created quite the habit,
Mhm.
maybe not from like a hardcore addiction standpoint, but this is just something that has become part of their culture and what they do.
Yeah.
What would be some guidance that you would give for somebody who is wanting to adopt a healthier relationship with their alcohol consumption?
Yeah. And I'll say this because this is obviously pretty broad because I'm not looking at someone's file and,
Yeah.
looking at their exact kind of past and present life and lifestyle. So, and this can also be applicable to really to anything that you feel like is maybe showing up as a barrier. So it doesn't have to be specifically alcohol. This can be, anything. But I think for me personally, and also from a behavioral change standpoint, so what we know about people rewiring their habits and doing things that will create lasting, substantial change, getting very honest and clear about what your values are first. And so what your values are going to be the things that you find inherently valuable to you and your life. And so what a lot of people do is they base their decisions and their goals and their lifestyle around what they see other people doing. But what they don't realize is that person's values might be very different than yours. And that's not to say that values are not a good or bad thing, they just are. And so, for example, and I talked about this in one of my earlier podcasts, if I'm setting my goals or even getting a lot of inspiration and I'm trying those things out and I'm implementing those in my life, right? Off of somebody who has very different values than me, it is not going to work. So, like, my values, for example, are health and wellness. Continuing education, service is a value for me. So acts of service, serving my community, my family is top tier of my values. If I'm adopting behaviors and I'm leaning into habits of somebody who doesn't have children,
Mm,
let's say it is a CEO that decided not to have children, totally fine. Her lifestyle and her habits and what she's pulled toward and what works for her might help her thrive. They might drastically conflict with what's going to work for me.
yeah.
So I think getting real honest about your specific and personalized values is a good place to start. So for me, one thing that was kind of a just really good download of information was health and wellness is not only what I preach every day, it is so important to me. It has changed my life. I don't want to know what 36-year-old Kira would look like, speak like, be like if health and wellness had not become a priority and a passion for me at 25. Alcohol consistently in my schedule and in my life directly conflicts with that value. Yeah. The two of those, for me, the two of those can't coexist peacefully at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I think for anybody who's curious and just going, where do I even start with my brain to know where the first yard line is on the football field, would be to ask yourself, what are your 3 top values? Not what other people, but yours. And then after you establish that, I think looking at what the pros and cons of it are with anything. So whether it's gluten or high impact cardio or having your phone in your bedroom past 10 o'clock. So some people are going to do fine. Like we talked about, there's going to be men out there that can have 2 beers the night after work, live their best life. I would be cognitively slower the next day and my sleep would get disturbed. Mm-hmm. It would also take up too much headspace for me. Was it right or wrong? Should I have it? Should I not? And so looking at, is it serving you? What does it give? What does it take from you? So establish your values first, and then ask yourself, whatever it is that you're toying with cutting back on or adding more of, what does it give? But also, what does it take from me? And so I think those are 2 good places just to start before you even think about actually shifting a behavior or making like an actionable change. I think that that's a good place. That's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. And do you recommend doing that with your partner or separately, or what does that look like? If somebody, because I know Chris and I, if we're not on the same page with this, then it's going to be more difficult, right? Like if he's opening a bottle of wine or cracking a beer on a Wednesday, that's going to feel a little tempting to me depending on the situation. So how do you feel about that?
I would say that it's definitely going to depend on the dynamic of the relationship. If we're speaking specifically from the viewpoint of our partner, who we live with, who we share our time with, I would say I would ask yourself and then have a conversation with them about the kind of support you need. So anytime we're going to put something into action. So for example, and I'm not saying this is exactly what you're doing, but we'll just use this for an example for the audience. Allie wants to not have alcohol Monday through Friday. That's something that she wants to experiment around with and play with. Anytime you're going to add in a new behavior or experiment with your behavior, you want to, 1, make it measurable so that you know if you're doing it or not. Mm-hmm. So if you were just like, I'm cutting back on alcohol, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're cutting back on, you're having 1 less sip? Does that mean there's certain days? So you want to get specific. That way it's measurable and you can track it to see what you want more of or less of. And then what you want to do is you want to address barriers and identify what kind of support you'll have. So in this example, and I'm just kind of putting you front and center, just making an example.
Oh, so I'm here for it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say Allie's going to cut back on, Allie's going to eliminate alcohol Monday through Friday and only have it per option on the weekends. So what you would want to do is you would want to say, okay, what is something that could get in the way of my success here? So we always throw out almost like worst case scenarios. So we'll use the example of my husband has had a long day and he opens a bottle of wine and pours me a glass. So you think about what could come up that could get in your way. Or like for me, when I did my 40 days, I've got a big wedding to go to. I've got the master's party is 2 days before my fast ends, all these things. So you think about those things ahead of time so that you can have options to pivot. And then thing that you want to do next after you identify your barrier is figure out what your support is going to be. So in that situation, if we're talking about how do I have this conversation with my spouse or my partner, it's a conversation. I'm wanting to cut back. I feel like this is taking more from me right now than it's giving. But because you're my person and I love you, I need to know what kind of support and boundaries we could have around this, because I want to play around with this, but I also want to honor your journey and where you're at with it and not expect you to absorb, my vibes and feelings. So
what does that look like?
Just have a conversation about it and toss the ball back and forth, brainstorm on it. Because I've been with my husband 14 years. I know one thing that for us that doesn't work is if I'm ready to make a change, or if, I'm like, everybody in the house is getting healthy. He's like, don't throw away my chips.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to eat the chips, but
Baby,
don't throw
this is your
chips.
journey.
Exactly.
You're in that boat alone, sister.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that if you're wanting it to be somewhat collaborative, just having that conversation, but also like getting your mind right first.
Yeah.
So figuring out the things we talked about first, the values, what are the pros and cons of it, what you might think you want to experiment around with, and then how that can look like in your household and how your partner and the external variant or variables in the household or environment can support you.
And then for something like alcohol, like let's say somebody wanted to, let's say just stop cold turkey. Let's say somebody out there is like, screw it, I'm done. How long, and again, assuming that they're not an alcoholic, which means that you have a chemical dependency, or there's a chemical going on that's going to, it's just different.
Yeah.
So, but this person, not an alcoholic, but like wants to quit. But they've created a little bit of a habit here. So for something like alcohol, how long, how many days in a row do you think it would take to start the new habit of not drinking? Because you know how you hear like 17 days, 27 days, depending on the thing. Do you think it even applies here?
So I do have to say, to piggyback off of what you said, I'm not an addiction specialist. My certifications are limited in that area. So if somebody has a chemical dependency, that's a whole nother ballgame, because
100%.
there are withdrawal symptoms. There's a detoxification process. So that obviously that person would need to get professional help.
Yes.
But if we're just talking about just habits, the same way we would with anything else. So a lot of those numbers, I think, have been regurgitated numbers that have just been thrown out.
I figured.
You need about 12 weeks minimum of trying to do a behavior for it to start to flirt on the line of becoming a habit.
12 weeks?
Yeah, this is from and I'm speaking, remember, I'm not coming in from like a chemical standpoint. I'm talking about behavior change. So my expertise is behavioral change.
Yeah.
That's how I coach, is mindset and then behavioral change and habits. And so 12 weeks-ish. And then really a habit is not an actual habit, like meaning you do it more passively and in a more routine fashion without having to put a ton of effort into it.
Yeah.
Just like you get up and brush your teeth, right? Like the things that you do that you have to be intentional. I got to make sure I have a toothbrush and toothpaste, but I'm not having to like write down action steps and all this to brush my teeth every morning,
right?
Or wash my face at night. So that's what I'm talking about. So if you're doing something consistently or not doing it, meaning you've cut it out and maybe replaced it with something healthier for 6 months, and you're doing that well, 6 months and forward would be considered the maintenance phase. So 12 weeks of that figuring it out and really establishing it as a habit. And then from the 12-week mark to 6 months is when 6 months past would be considered a maintenance phase if we're looking at it from a behavior standpoint.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Which sounds like a really long time. I do want to put that out there, but also we come from a culture of like the 2-week boot camp in 30 days. And, so we also have to remember that we're in a very, very sellable market where people want everything instant and fast. And we've almost been programmed to think that if it isn't delivered in that expedited fashion, that it's not doable.
Mm-hmm. And this is where the choice comes in. Right. This is where you just decide, okay, is this worth it to me? And I love how you added in those steps or mentioned in those steps, the pros and cons and realizing, okay, yes, we know what it's giving. You know what it's giving because that's why you keep choosing it. But like really, really looking at and weighing the con side of the equation of what it's taking from you.
Yeah. And there's the physical, I'm not an expert in alcohol. I really try to, from a health and wellness standpoint, I really try to lean more towards a holistic viewpoint and in the habit side of things versus like, I'm not an expert in, keto or anything like that. But it's very clear. Yeah. Alcohol is a neurotoxin.
What does that mean?
It means it's toxic to your brain.
Oopsie.
Yeah. And so but here's the thing, the same way I know that, the cupcake is going to, absolutely sabotage my blood sugar and cancer loves sugar. So we're all dabbling in something that's not ideal for us. And that's okay. I'm all about balance, but we have these conversations in the health space. We'll sit there and get in arguments over if people should have kale or spinach.
Yeah.
But we're not having these conversations. And again, we just have to be really honest. It is a neurotoxin, meaning it impairs your cognitive function. That's why you get a little less balanced. That's why you don't always, if you've had, some cocktails and you're a little buzzy, you don't always remember every single detail of something. It is a neurotoxin. It also in females, I don't know the numbers, so I don't want to quote it, but I do know it's past 20%. I think it's under 40. It's in between 20 and 50%. I think it's under 50. It drastically increases our risk for cancer and breast cancer.
Love that.
And so again,
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, it does. And it does. And I would encourage everybody. Andrew Huberman, I don't know if anybody listens to him. He's a Stanford professor, but he has a podcast called the Huberman Lab, and he does an entire episode on alcohol, and he has no emotional connection to it. He's like, I'm a scientist. I'm just going to tell you what it does to your body. And he has a lot of shorter YouTube videos on it, but I appreciated his because I needed the emotional connection to not be there. The social, I just kind of needed just a little bit of perspective on just the facts.
Yeah.
And it is toxic. It is. It will wreck your microbiome in your gut. We know that your gut now is considered your second brain. Yeah. So much happens within our gut and also the state of health of our gut. And it impairs that. So there are some physical things when you are consistently ingesting alcohol that are not optimal. And so especially, I know that you for years have prioritized your health, your workouts, your supplements, your sleep, your stress, for anybody who hasn't, go to Allie's highlights because she is walking the talk. And so, and I try to do, obviously I try to prioritize that. And so one reason I want to be so specific about when I do have it, it's almost like the pasta nights. I'll do an Italian night at our house and pasta, but it is so rare. It's delicious. And we do the bread and we do the butter. But I can't do that consistently. It would absolutely wreck everything else I'm being intentional about.
Yeah.
And so
and just realizing, and somebody else had mentioned that too. She was like, you had mentioned in a podcast, how you feel about your health and how I personally affirm, I'm so healthy. And, if I get sick, I think it's weird. And that's genuinely how I feel. So it's to be drinking as much as we do personally, it's just so contradictory
Mm.
to our value of, I mean, that's a true value in this household,
Yeah.
especially with Chris. So
Yeah.
it's like, what are we doing here? And not even realizing, I mean, we know, conceptually, alcohol's not good
Mm.
for you. Everybody knows that. But like when
Right.
you really hear the facts,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for me, I kind of wanted to avoid it a little bit because I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
And I want to say this too. Somebody might be listening to this who isn't there yet. And like, don't judge yourself. And again, we're not trying to push this on you at
Mm-hmm.
all. This is just like very timely for us. I think
Yeah.
part of it is 35.
Oh, oh.
Damn it. Somebody was like, maybe it's a spiritual awakening. I was like, or the fact that I'm 35 now. So it's
Maybe
probably,
it's because we're geriatric and me and Allie are moving into a nursing home next week
stop.
with our kids. Maybe that's why, ma'am, whoever wrote in.
We can't hang anymore. Okay. We can't, the party stops at us.
If we're not drinking, nobody's drinking.
Nobody's drinking. Everybody stop immediately. Immediately. But yeah, it's just, it's so wild. And also another, you probably know this better than I do, but I've heard that alcohol stays in your system for somewhere around 10 days before like your body fully detoxes from it. Do
I
you know anything?
don't I don't know that, but it's not in and out in a day.
No.
I mean, because you'll know, a lot of people will notice that especially as you get older, um, you might not feel hungover. And like I said, I'm not drinking copious amounts of alcohol. I
Yeah.
could have a
Oh
glass
yeah.
of red wine and I could feel off the next day.
Yeah.
So we're not me and Allie are not talking about going on benders. We're just
No.
talking about, leisurely having cocktails.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I have to punt the ball on that one. I know how long it stays in
Okay.
your system, but it is not out the next day. It's not
No.
like you drink a glass of water, flush it out. We're going on about our business.
No, not the vibe. Yeah, somebody fact check me on that. Well, I'll figure that out. I'm doing a solo episode on this too, so I'll bring those facts with me. But it's just, I think the whole point of this and why I wanted to have you on, Kira, is just to talk about the choice, the intentionality. Is it aligned? And I love so much the point about it being in alignment with your top three core values.
Yeah.
If yes, great. If no, okay, what can we do to take more control and to be more intentional and make it more of a choice versus I don't even know if, I don't think it's a habit, but,
Yeah.
less of a conscious choice.
Yeah. And if it is something that um people still want to have in their life, make it more of an experience,
Yeah.
like when you have that like burger, because you never have a burger and it's just so worth it, and it's got all, you're like, yes, because you don't ever have it, like it's just
Mm-hmm.
this experience. And I think it's okay to be celebratory with it, but 100% what you said, there's not it's so ingrained in every single aspect of our social fabric and everything we do. We're celebrating, we're having, this is how I relax, this is how I celebrate, this is how I mourn, this is how I travel, and so
Mm-hmm.
figuring out like, no, where does that fit in for you?
Yeah. Yeah. And not to be the conspiracy theorist
Oh, I'm here for
person,
it. Are we about to flat earth it up in here?
probably. But when you think about our culture
Mm-hmm.
and how normalized and how alcohol culture is constantly shoved down our throats in
Mm-hmm.
every direction that we look, you have to ask why.
Yeah.
Why? And that to me, when you really think about it, is a big ass red flag. The fact
Yeah.
that like everywhere we look, this is something, it's so normalized. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, why would they want us to? And especially when and you start to read up and understand the true what happens to your body by drinking a certain
Yeah.
amount, and cancer and all the things.
Yeah. If you follow the money trail, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And me and you mentioned this before we started recording, but there's also with there can also be this undertone, or even just outright kind of connotation of, if I don't have this unregulated freedom with alcohol, that I have a problem. And oh, is that not safe for you? Do you have issues?
Oh yeah, the peer
Do
pressure around it.
you? Yeah. And then what that can speak over people is, it encourages you to not trust yourself with it.
Yeah.
Because of that place, because someone else, when society comes at it from that angle, it's what it speaks over us is, I don't trust you to navigate this intuitively on your own.
Yeah.
And then we can absorb that. And so one thing I've done lately is, I have so many people that I follow and read their books. The top performers, like the people that I listen to their stuff and read their books and want to go to their conferences and have seats at tables one day that look like theirs, they don't entertain those conversations.
Yeah.
Most of them have a very, very restricted relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
From a performance standpoint, because like me and you talked about, you and I are creators. We support a lot of people high level. We don't have cognitive days off.
No. That's not
and so the top performers have a very, very, very intentional relationship with alcohol. Jenna Kutcher was talking about it on her podcast a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I think she's like a year of no alcohol, because she was just like, it makes me feel like crap, man. Julie Solomon talked about it on hers. Mm-hmm. I think there is conversations happening, and I think people that have a platform or have a place of not authority but influence, meaning they support people, have to say, hey, I'm asking these questions too. Don't have an answer, but I am throwing out the question, because we get to design our life.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it here, because I know if I've learned anything from growing this platform and doing what I do, it's that if I'm thinking about it, I'm not the only one who's thinking about it. Yeah. So if it's on my heart, there's a reason. And I'm just so thankful that I decided to speak up, because it started so many conversations. It sparked this conversation between you and I, and you've now brought us so much value on it. So I agree with you. I think starting to pay attention to the people who are making big moves and who are really, truly taking care of themselves and understand wellness and influence and leadership, and seeing their behaviors and what they're doing, it's going to tell you a lot. I wholeheartedly agree. So if you're feeling isolated, or if you ever do have the moment where you feel isolated in a group, don't. It's okay. Mm-hmm. But I know you have to go, so I want to be mindful of your time. But I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to learn us a little bit over here. And I can't stress enough, guys, like, go follow Kira, go listen to Art and Yoga and Wellness podcast, because you talk all about so many different things, and you give such an honest perspective, and I mean, you're just so knowledgeable, and I'm just very grateful to know you, and grateful that you were able to take the time today to hang with us.
You're so sweet. Thank you. And I just want to affirm you in hopping on Monday, because I know that for anybody, all of us, we have that bully voice sometime that's like, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Don't say that.
This is going to hurt your brand. This is going to hurt your reputation. This is going to,
100%. What will people think and say? And you being humble enough but also honoring, being honest, but also honoring where you were at in that moment, was a catalyst for other people to reach out to you and open up a conversation and feel like there was a space for that conversation to even have. So I definitely want to say thank you for you to use your influence to just ask bigger questions. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to do something a little bit different tomorrow than we did today. Yeah. And so your stories on Monday did that for people.
Well, thank you. And we don't have it figured out. And we
No,
never
I don't
will.
have it figured out.
But we're gonna try our damnedest. And that's the whole point. Let's just try. Let's just
Yeah,
try.
absolutely.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Arden Yoga Wellness, and our website is ardenyoga.com. The podcast is the Arden Yoga and Wellness podcast. And yeah, I think those are the three main places.
Are you taking clients? I know you're getting booked up like fast.
I am taking, we'll be taking 3 new one-on-one clients starting in July. So applications are open and we'll be taking applications through June.
Ooh, y'all hear that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to come out well before that. So I, again, cannot stress, go check out Kira, give her a follow. And if you're looking for more hands-on support on your wellness journey, I couldn't recommend somebody better. So thank you. I adore you.
Thank you
And we'll
so
have
much
you
for
back.
having me. All right.